The ballroom at the Harrington Foundation workshop in Raleigh was glowing with soft gold lighting, polished floors, and conversations bouncing from table to table. Mia stood near the entrance, holding her workshop folder tight against her chest. She hadn't expected the room to feel so large, or so loud, or so filled with people who looked like they had already decided their lives 2 years in advance. Her breath caught, not because of nerves, but because her eyes landed on someone she never expected to see again. Samuel. Not the simple Sam from that Charlotte night. Not the man who joked with her near a plant at a mixer. Not the stranger who ordered tacos with her at midnight. No, this Samuel was the man on business channels, the face of luxury hotels across the country, the figure always surrounded by staff and cameras. But right now, he was standing only 15 steps away, staring at her as if a memory had just jumped out of his past. His expression shifted. Confusion, surprise, and something like recognition pulled together all at once. Mia swallowed hard and forced herself not to move. Not yet. Not until she understood what his eyes were asking. He didn't know her secret, not the one she carried under her heart, not the one she woke up with every morning, but he recognized her face. A woman stepped close to Samuel, leaning toward his ear. She kept her voice low, but Mia watched the moment everything stiffened inside him. "Sir, that woman is the one who declined press conversations earlier. Do you know her?" Samuel froze, his eyes still on Mia. Mia felt her stomach twist. Her grip tightened on her folder. She wanted to look away, but something in his stare held her still. Samuel took a slow step forward, then another. His assistant straightened, sensing something unusual. Mia stepped back instinctively. Not out of fear, but out of protection. Her hand slid across her stomach, quiet and subtle. But to her, it felt loud enough to echo through the room. The space between them closed. The air tightened, and Mia realized. The past she thought she left in Charlotte was now walking toward her in a polished suit. For a moment, Mia forgot about the tables, the chatter, and the polished crowd surrounding her. It felt like the room shrank until only 2 people existed in it. Her and the man who changed her life without even knowing it. She drew in a slow breath, steadying herself. This wasn't Charlotte. This wasn't a quiet corner near a friendly plant. This was real life catching up to her, right in the middle of a professional event. Have you ever had one night change everything about your future? A night you thought would stay tucked away forever, only to watch it walk right back into the room when you least expected it? The kind of moment that stops your steps. The kind of moment that makes your heart thump harder than normal. The kind of moment where your body reacts before your mind even understands why. Mia didn't plan for this. She didn't even want this meeting today. She came to share her consulting work, not confront her past. But life has a way of circling back at the most inconvenient times, especially when unfinished business is involved. And as Samuel's gaze settled on her, curious, searching, almost trying to place her, she felt every choice she made in the past 3 months push up at once. She whispered inside her mind, "Not here. Please, not here." But the universe didn't ask for permission. This was the moment where everything was about to shift again. Mia forced herself to breathe, even as her heartbeat pushed faster than she wanted. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't look away. Because deep down, she already knew. This wasn't simply a reunion. This was a moment holding consequences. Mia carried a truth that could reshape 2 lives, and Samuel carried an identity she never expected. When one night leads to a responsibility bigger than either person imagined, the real question becomes this: what happens when the truth belongs to a billionaire and the consequences belong to her heart? Mia shifted her folder closer to her stomach, hoping no one noticed. Samuel watched her with a puzzled stare, the kind of stare that said he remembered her, but not the story behind the memory. He didn't know the weight she carried. He didn't know the reason she had avoided every press question today. He didn't know the life growing quietly under her hand. Mia felt a mix of fear and courage rise inside her, because this wasn't just a story about a mistake or a moment. This about the cost of choices, and the reality of being connected to a man who lived in a world nothing like hers. A truth she never planned to tell was suddenly closer to being exposed than ever. And Samuel? He was about to learn that the night he spent trying to escape his world had tied him to someone who never asked for any of this. The tension between Mia and Samuel hung in the air like a thread pulled too tight. He took one more step in her direction, his confusion turning into something more focused. Curiosity mixed with the faint pull of a memory he wasn't sure he could trust. Mia's breath trembled. Every pass she took to avoid this moment had finally led her right back to it. Stay with me, because what happens after this moment will test family, identity, and the choices that shape our future. This isn't just a story of two people. It's a journey filled with sharp turns, hard questions, and surprising moments that will stay with you. And trust me, the twists waiting ahead will leave you stunned. Samuel opened his mouth slightly, as if he was finally ready to speak. Mia pressed her hand gently against her stomach again, this time not out of fear, but because she felt her child remind her, this truth matters. Before we continue, please tap the like button, comment to support our channel, and subscribe. Engagement helps YouTube share stories like this with people who truly enjoy powerful life lessons. Welcome back to Mr. George Stories, where life's most meaningful lessons are told through unforgettable journeys. If you're new here, thank you for joining this family. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story that just might change your perspective. The screen settles back on Mia and Samuel, two people standing steps apart, unaware that their lives are about to collide all over again. Charlotte, on a weekend evening, had a way of humming without trying. Cars passed by with soft music spilling from their windows. Street vendors called out to crowds drifting toward rooftop lounges, and a warm breeze carried hints of cologne, laughter, and fried food. It was the kind of city that felt alive even before you stepped into it. Mia stepped out of her rideshare with a dramatic sigh, tugging her small suitcase behind her as she stared at the towering hotel in front of her. The glass exterior reflected the sunset like melted gold. Expensive, clean, intimidating. The kind of place where even the lobby plants probably had resumes. For these prices, she muttered under her breath, while walking through the automatic doors. The floor better massage my feet. Inside, the lobby was buzzing. People in fitted suits and glittering dresses moved with a confidence that made her wish she had worn heels, then immediately reminded herself she valued her ankles too much for that. She rolled her suitcase forward, smiling politely at two staff members before stepping into the check-in line. Mia wasn't afraid of professional spaces. She'd worked in hotels long enough to know every smell, every pattern, every secret behind the front desk smiles. But tonight wasn't about work. It was about stepping out, as her friend insisted. She was here for a hospitality leadership mixer, a chance to network, supposedly. She already knew it was going to be draining. Still, she checked in, accepted her keycard, and made her way to the elevator. She didn't know that just one floor above her, another arrival had taken place, one that would change everything about her future. Samuel walked into the same lobby about an hour earlier wearing simple jeans, a navy button-up, and a baseball cap pulled low. The disguise wasn't dramatic. He didn't need sunglasses or a fake mustache, but it was enough for him to blend in. People rarely recognized billionaires, unless they came with flashing cameras or escorting security. Tonight, he brought neither. He moved through the lobby with a posture that looked casual to strangers, but was actually relief. He'd left his assistant back in Raleigh with strict instructions. No calls tonight unless something is burning. His world, meetings, reporters, structured dinners, constant negotiation, felt like it had swallowed him whole. He needed a night to be ordinary. Not Samuel Harrington, heir to the hotel empire. Not the face of Harrington Properties, just a man in a city. Tonight, he booked under initials. Room 1107. No spotlight, no legacy, just space. It was exactly what he wanted, and exactly why he crossed paths with Mia hours later. The event ballroom was dressed in elegant whites and golds. Tables arranged neatly with name tags, brochures, and business cards. Light music played in the background. Not enough to distract, but enough to make silence feel expensive. Mia entered the room with the expression of someone walking into a dentist's office. She scanned the space, searching for her friend, who was nowhere to be found. She texted her immediately. "Mia, Girl, where you at, friend? I'm on the way. Parking. Mia, I'm leaving. Friend, don't stay. Meet people. Mia, people draining. Friend, if you walk out, I will drag you back. Mia sighed, shoved her phone in her purse, and moved toward a tall decorative plant near the wall. It looked expensive, like it had its own tax bracket. She stood beside it, sipping the drink she picked up from the refreshment table. The drink tasted like fruit, pretending to be professional. She texted again. Mia, this drink tastes confused. She didn't notice the man approaching the plant until he was only a few steps away, seemingly escaping a conversation as well. Samuel, but not the Samuel she would come to know later. Not the polished executive. Not the man who appeared on financial segments. Just a tired stranger wearing a night that didn't suit him. He glanced at her, then at the plant, then back at her. Do you also feel like that plant is the only one who understands you right now? Mia stared, then blinked, then burst into genuine laughter, the kind that escaped before she could stop it. Oh yes, she said, placing a hand on her hip. We've been bonding for about 10 minutes. It listens better than half the people in here. Samuel smiled, and it wasn't the polite smile rich people practiced. It was real, like he hadn't smiled like that in weeks. Their conversation flowed like they had known each other for years. No pressure, no performance, no swapped job titles. Mia didn't ask what he did. Samuel didn't ask where she worked. They didn't trade names. They didn't pry. It was a small pocket of comfort in a room full of polished discomfort. Durham had its own heartbeat, steady, familiar, rich with black culture and community ties. Every morning, the neighborhood came alive, with conversations drifting through open windows. Mrs. Jackson from 2 houses down always stepped outside at 7:30 sharp to water her plants and greet anyone within earshot. Teenagers played basketball in the afternoons. Someone grilled on weekends, and church announcements traveled faster than the actual church bulletin. Mia fit into this world without effort. People trusted her. She had a reputation for knowing how to bring calm into chaotic situations, whether she was adjusting a hotel lobby or settling an argument at the community center. On her second morning home, she walked into her favorite cafe, a small black-owned spot with walls full of artsy portraits and a menu that took pride in its sweet tea. The owner greeted her with a side grin. Mia, where you been? Haven't seen you in a few days. Work, she replied, sliding onto a stool. And a trip to Charlotte. Charlotte? The owner leaned in. Did you behave yourself? Mia laughed and waved her hand dismissively. I always behave. Uh-huh, he said, unconvinced. You want your usual? Yes, please. She sipped the sweet tea and let its familiar comfort settle her. Still, something inside her felt unsettled, a flutter of sorts, a suspicion too small to name, but too persistent to ignore. A week later, the suspicion grew. By week 2, it knocked louder. By week 3, it became a truth she could no longer push aside. She stood in her bathroom with a test in her hand, the kind that carried answers no one could unsee. The seconds felt slow, like time had thickened in the air around her. Her heartbeat stayed steady, but her breathing didn't. When the result appeared, Mia didn't shout. She didn't faint. She didn't even move. She whispered, "Oh, Lord, it's my turn." Her knees felt weak, so she sat on the edge of the tub, the cool surface grounding her for a moment. Her fingers shook slightly, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. Life had always tested her in small ways. Unexpected bills, work challenges, heartbreaks, and disappointments. But this was bigger. This was permanent. This was a new life forming inside her. And the father was a man whose last name she didn't know. A man who ate tacos with her and walked the city with her. A man she may never see again. She slowly set the test on the counter, covering her face with both hands as confusion pressed down on her chest. Not sadness, not regret, just pure uncertainty woven into a moment she wasn't prepared for. Girl, she mumbled to her reflection in the mirror. You've done it now. Over the next several days, the question followed Mia everywhere. During work, during her walks through the neighborhood, during quiet moments when she touched her stomach without thinking. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't afraid to be a mother. She wasn't worried about judgment. But she did want answers. For her child. For herself. "Life does not ask permission before testing you," she whispered one night while lying in bed. That truth settled deep inside her. She wasn't searching for a relationship. She wasn't chasing him. She wasn't begging for involvement. But she needed to understand how this happened. With a man whose world might be far different from hers. The question wasn't whether she could do this alone. She already knew she could. The real question was, would she ever find him? The morning sunlight crept through Mia's curtains, painting gentle streaks across her living room. She sat at the small wooden table near her window, a warm cup of ginger tea between her hands. Pregnancy cravings weren't loud yet, but the nausea had begun tapping her shoulder. She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. She needed clarity, not closure, not romance, not even contact, just answers. She needed to know who Sam really was. Her lack of information hung over her like a cloud. She had no last name, no phone number, no email, no social media handle, nothing but a memory of warm laughter and a man who blinked dramatically when she asked him to. It felt impossible, and yet she couldn't ignore the feeling that she owed her child more than guesses. After a few quiet minutes, Mia grabbed her purse, slipped her feet into soft sneakers, and took a deep breath. "All right," she said to herself. "Let's start where the story started." The drive to Charlotte wasn't planned so much as it was instinctive. Her mind kept telling her it wouldn't lead anywhere. But her heart insisted she needed one more attempt. She parked in the same busy hotel garage, walked across the same marble floor, and approached the same front desk where she had checked in weeks earlier. The lobby was quieter this time, but the space still carried that polished, expensive calm. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. "Hello? Welcome. How can I help you?" Mia swallowed, suddenly aware that she wasn't sure how to frame her question. "Hi," she began. I'm looking for someone who stayed here recently." "I see. Do you have the guest's full name?" Mia winced internally. "I don't. I only know him as Sam." The receptionist blinked politely. "Do you have the dates of his stay?" "Yes, about 3 months ago." "All right," the receptionist said, hands moving across the keyboard. "Let me check." Mia tried not to fidget. She hooked her fingers together and waited, feeling both hopeful and ridiculous. The receptionist frowned slightly, studying the screen. "We had 3 guests named Samuel that week. But," she paused, "only one checked in using initials." Mia leaned forward. "Initials? What initials?" "I can't share full details," the receptionist whispered carefully, "but the initials were SRH. Mia felt her heartbeat shift. "What does that stand for?" The receptionist kept her voice low. "Guests who use initials instead of a full name usually do it for privacy reasons. Often very important guests." "Important?" A chill crawled up Mia's arms. She stepped back slowly, absorbing the revelation. "Thank you," she murmured. She walked out of the lobby with a heart that suddenly felt too full. Not with joy, not even with fear, but with urgency. The kind that presses behind your ribs when the truth is getting close. SRH. She repeated it under her breath on the way back to her car. What did it mean? She didn't know. But something inside her whispered that she was closer than she realized. While Mia drove home, piecing together clues, Samuel moved through a world that couldn't have been more different from hers. His name was known across the hospitality industry. His hotels dotted multiple states, each designed with sleek architecture and luxury finishes. He was CEO not because he wanted glory, but because he was expected to uphold a legacy his family had built for decades. His mornings typically began with a briefing. His afternoons were filled with meetings, strategy calls, or site visits. His evenings were often spent hosting investors or reviewing expansion plans. He didn't complain, he didn't rebel, but he rarely rested. Today he walked through the lobby of one of his Raleigh properties, surrounded by 3 managers, discussing renovation budgets. His assistant followed closely behind, updating him on press requests. "Sir, your interview for the business channel is confirmed. They want comments on the new expansion." Samuel sighed lightly. "Let's keep it short, and let them know I'm not discussing personal matters. Only business." "Yes, sir." He stepped onto the elevator, polished mirrors reflecting his neatly buttoned suit and carefully composed expression. Anyone looking at him would see stability, success, control. No one would guess that a night in Charlotte with a woman whose name he never asked had stayed somewhere in the back of his mind. It lingered not as regret, but as a rare moment when his life felt normal. He hadn't expected that moment to echo months later. Back in Durham, Mia sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open. She typed SRH meaning and initials SRH Charlotte Hotel guest into the search bar, but nothing useful surfaced. She sighed and leaned back in her chair. She wasn't a detective. She was a consultant who understood lighting, energy, and the psychology of hotel guests, not the inner workings of mysterious initials. Her stomach nudged her again. A reminder, this search wasn't just curiosity. She closed the laptop gently and ran her fingers over her abdomen. "Who are you?" she whispered, not asking the baby, but the man tied to their future. That evening, Mia reheated takeout and settled onto her couch, turning on the television for background noise. She flipped through channels until she landed on a local business update. A reporter stood before a modern glass building, mic in hand. And in regional news today, Harrington Hotels has announced a major expansion through several southern cities. Mia didn't pay attention at first. Harrington Hotels was a name she recognized vaguely, but it held no emotional weight until the camera switched to a live shot. And the reporter continued, "This development comes under the leadership of CEO Samuel Harrington." Mia's fork froze midair. The screen displayed a tall white man in a tailored suit shaking hands with partners. He smiled politely for the cameras. Mia's eyes widened. Her breath caught. Her heart began to pound in her ears. The face on the screen, the eyes, the jawline, the voice. Her Sam, but not Sam. Samuel Harrington, a billionaire hotel magnate. A man whose initials were SRH. Her fork slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the plate. She leaned forward, staring at the screen as though it might change if she blinked too hard. No, not might. It did. It changed everything. "That's him," she whispered, spine straightening. "That's him." Her living room felt too small for the truth pressing down on her. Her hand moved back to her stomach, trembling slightly. "Baby," she said quietly, "your daddy isn't just somebody. He's somebody with a whole empire." The weight of it made her sink back onto the couch. Her head dropped into her hands as she struggled to process what this revelation meant. She didn't want his wealth. She wasn't chasing him for status. She certainly wasn't interested in being part of anyone's legacy. But her child deserved answers. Clear ones. Truthful ones. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Okay," she whispered. "Now I know his name." It wasn't closure. It was a beginning. A beginning she hadn't asked for, but one she couldn't ignore anymore. She didn't sleep that night. Her thoughts ran circles until morning, and by sunrise, another twist unfolded. 2 weeks later, Mia checked her mailbox, expecting bills, flyers, and maybe a neighbor's misplaced package. What she didn't expect was a crisp white envelope with embossed lettering, Harrington Foundation Professional Outreach Division. Her breath hitched. She tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was an invitation. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to participate in our Hospitality Innovation Workshop in Raleigh." Her name, her work, her city. It felt random, but her intuition whispered otherwise. Fate had started connecting the pieces, and now she was being invited into his world, though neither of them knew it yet. The Harrington Foundation letter sat on Mia's kitchen counter for 2 full hours before she touched it again. She kept walking past it, then circling back, staring at it like it was some kind of test written in invisible ink. Her heart pounded each time her eyes landed on the embossed lettering. She finally sat down, holding the invitation between her fingers. A workshop, with her name personally selected, hosted by the same foundation tied to Samuel Harrington himself. Her stomach fluttered, partly from nerves, partly from the growing life inside her. "Do I even go?" she whispered to the quiet room. Attending meant stepping into Samuel's world, even if she didn't speak to him, even if he never saw her, even if the workshop had nothing to do with him directly. Showing up meant acknowledging that their one-night connection had transformed into something impossible to ignore. But not going. That meant denying herself an opportunity she had earned, long before she ever crossed paths with him. Mia leaned back, pressing a hand against her belly. "Okay, baby. Let's think this through." She listed her reasons out loud. One of her lifelong habits. Reason 1. This workshop is good for my business. A nod. Reason 2. They picked me for a reason. Another nod. Reason 3. I cannot keep hiding from a truth that will eventually show itself. She paused at that. Her breath steadied. Her heart didn't. Her cousin's voice rang in her memory. "You got pregnant by a shadow, Mia. You better find out what kind of shadow he is." She groaned softly. That family conversation still lived rent-free in her mind. But they weren't wrong. She needed clarity, not drama, not chaos. Just answers. She picked up the invitation again, feeling its weight like it carried the next chapter of her life. "Fine," she finally whispered. "I'll go." Meanwhile, in Raleigh, Samuel had no idea the woman who lived rent-free in a quiet corner of his memory was about to step into his path again. He rubbed his temples as he sat in his office, reviewing expansion reports. The exhaustion from constant leadership pulled at him as if the world expected him to be indestructible. His assistant knocked softly and entered with a folder. "Sir, the guest list for the foundation workshop." Samuel waved a tired hand. "Just leave it there. I'll look later." He didn't. Not yet. And because he didn't notice her name. Not yet. Mia spent the next 2 days preparing for the workshop, though preparing might have been an exaggeration. Half the time she sat on her bed staring at her open suitcase. The other half she wandered around her house, trying to figure out if she was making a brave decision or a reckless one. On the third morning, she stood in front of her closet, hands on her hips, annoyed at every single piece of clothing she owned. "Why is everything either too tight or too loose?" she muttered. Pregnancy had a way of changing her body faster than her wardrobe could keep up. She held up a soft blue blouse and squinted at it like she expected it to explain itself. "It'll do." She sighed. "You better behave." Her cravings kicked in suddenly, sharp and demanding. She marched to the kitchen and grabbed a jar of pickles, then dipped a spoon into peanut butter. Because pregnancy didn't respect logic or dignity. She shook her head at herself. This child is already doing the most. Still, when she thought about the workshop, her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't scared of Samuel. She wasn't even scared of the truth. She was scared of the moment, the one where her worlds might collide before she was emotionally ready. She placed a hand on her belly. "We're doing this together," she whispered. "No running." Across the city, Samuel sat through a meeting that felt longer than a winter without sunlight. His managers discussed projected occupancy numbers, renovations, and guest experience ratings. Normally, he would have absorbed everything with sharp focus. Today, his mind kept drifting. He didn't know why. He didn't know to what, but something inside him felt unsettled. Not in a bad way, more like a quiet pull toward something he couldn't name. When the meeting ended, he stepped into the hallway and took a slow breath. His assistant approached him again. "Sir, do you want to review the workshop list now?" Samuel shook his head. "Later, you'll need to approve the keynote talking points as well." "I know," he replied, rubbing his forehead. "Just give me a moment." The assistant nodded and stepped back. Samuel loosened his tie slightly. He had built a reputation for excellence, but the pressure behind the scenes was a weight he carried alone. The workshop was supposed to be routine, a yearly event to uplift small hospitality businesses. He didn't expect anything unusual. He didn't expect his spast to walk through those doors. The morning of the workshop arrived faster than Mia expected. The sun was still stretching over Durham when she stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the blue blouse she hoped wouldn't betray her by tightening mid-event. Her belly wasn't large yet, but she could feel the shift, the slight roundness, the tenderness, the reminder that her truth was growing whether she felt ready or not. She applied light makeup, then paused, staring at herself. "You can do this," she whispered. "Keep your head high. Keep your heart steady." But her thoughts didn't listen. They wandered to Samuel. Would he be there? Would he recognize her? Would he look at her and immediately know? Her pulse quickened. She shook it off and grabbed her bag. No overthinking. Just go. She drove the familiar highway toward Raleigh, her hands tight on the steering wheel every time a new worry surfaced. She practiced how she'd act if she saw him. Be calm. Act like you're here for business. Do not panic. Do not faint. The last one was important. Pregnancy hormones were not subtle. When she finally arrived at the sleek conference center owned by the Harrington Foundation, she parked carefully and stepped out. The building was beautiful. Modern glass, greenery arranged in perfect symmetry, and staff moving with polished coordination. She took a deep breath and walked inside. Meanwhile, Samuel was in one of the upstairs boardrooms, straightening his jacket. He had slept poorly. The workshop demanded his presence. And though he had done events like this dozens of times, today felt different. His assistant handed him a copy of the talking points. "Sir, the attendees have started checking in." "Good," Samuel replied. "I'll be down shortly." He glanced at the guest list sitting on the table, but still didn't flip through it. Something stopped him. Maybe habit, maybe exhaustion, maybe instinct. He buttoned his jacket and walked toward the elevator. Downstairs, the buzz of the event was growing. Entrepreneurs, consultants, and small business owners moved around with nervous excitement. The staff announced that the keynote would begin soon. Mia stood near a registration table, holding her folder, trying to control her breathing. "Relax," she whispered. "You belong here." But the moment she stepped into the ballroom, something shifted. She felt it before she saw it. A quiet sensation, like the air changed around her. She straightened her blouse, adjusted her folder, and lifted her chin. On the other side of the room, Samuel entered. He scanned the crowd with calm professionalism, and Mia's world tightened. Both worlds were in the same space now, both moving toward an inevitable collision, and neither had any idea how much this moment would change. The ballroom hummed with conversation, soft music, and the rustle of event programs. People shifted between tables, greeting one another with polite smiles and eager handshakes. But Mia didn't notice any of that. Her breath caught the moment Samuel stepped through the doors. The sight of him pulled her still. Same steady walk, same calm expression, same presence she felt that night in Charlotte. Except now he carried himself with the confidence of a man who owned the building he stood in. Mia's fingers tightened around her workshop folder. Instinctively, her other hand drifted toward her stomach. A motion so subtle she hoped no one noticed, especially not him. But Samuel paused, not because he saw her yet, but because something in the room felt familiar. He scanned the crowd, polite and composed, taking in the faces. He nodded at an organizer, shook a hand, exchanged greetings, but the instinct tugged again. A quiet pull he didn't understand. Then his eyes drifted left, and he froze. Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, blue blouse catching the light, her expression a mix of shock, caution, and something else he couldn't name. He blinked once, twice. His mind leaped backward, to Charlotte, to a quiet corner near a plant, to a night where he wasn't a CEO, but simply a man laughing with a woman who felt like peace. Mia. He didn't say her name out loud, but he felt it in his chest. He took a small step in her direction. She stepped back, only slightly, but enough for him to notice. Her hand moved to her stomach again, this time quicker, protective, almost instinctive. She lowered it immediately, trying not to draw attention. But Samuel's eyes caught the motion. His brows lowered a hint. Concern? Confusion? Recognition? Mia forced a steady breath and reminded herself, keep it together. Keep it surface level. If he speaks to you, you're here for the workshop, not the truth. Not yet. Samuel tried to compose himself, rolling his shoulders back as if grounding himself. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't prepared for this. He certainly hadn't prepared to see the woman who occupied a quiet corner of his thoughts, standing in his professional space. But fate didn't ask him if today was convenient. It simply delivered. Samuel took another slow step toward her, moving with that composed confidence he always carried. But inside, nothing felt composed at all. His pulse tapped a little faster. His thoughts scattered. He didn't understand why seeing her again hit him harder than any business decision he'd made in the past month. Mia kept her posture steady, even though her heart felt like it was sprinting. She angled her body slightly away, pretending to study the program booklet in her hand. She wasn't hiding from him. Not exactly. She just needed a second to breathe before the world tipped over. The workshop organizer stepped between attendees, guiding people to their seats. Guests shuffled around in small clusters. And in that movement, Samuel used the moment to close the distance. Me. His voice softened the air around her. She looked up, slowly, carefully, as if lifting her chin too fast would reveal more truth than she intended. Sam, she replied, using the name she knew him by. Her tone was calm, friendly, controlled. It was everything her insides were not. Hearing her speak his name again pulled something loose in his chest. He smiled, small and genuine. I didn't expect to see you here. Same, she said, keeping the conversation short. Surface level. Safe. He glanced around the room, then back at her. Are you attending the workshop? Yes. My consulting work got me an invitation. I'm not surprised, Samuel said. And he meant it. Even from their brief conversation months ago, he remembered how sharp her insight was. Mia nodded, grateful for neutral territory, but her stomach tightened when his eyes flickered briefly toward her midsection. She held her folder a little higher. Not obvious, just enough to create a barrier. He wasn't judging. He wasn't assuming. He simply noticed, and that alone made her pulse jump. Samuel shifted his weight slightly. How have you been? Busy, she answered with a small smile. Work, family, life things. Her phrasing was vague on purpose. She wasn't ready for anything deeper. Not in a ballroom full of people. Not while holding a truth too big to casually drop between brochures and name tags. Samuel nodded, though a crease of curiosity formed between his brows. He sensed distance. He sensed hesitation. And it didn't match the warm woman he remembered from that night. But he didn't push. Not yet. The moment held tension. Not romantic, not dramatic. Just a subtle weight neither of them could ignore. Before either of them could speak again, the room shifted. Attendees began finding their seats as the foundation staff announced the start of the session. The noise rose around them. Chairs sliding, soft chatter, papers rustling. But the space between Mia and Samuel felt strangely quiet, like they were standing in a small bubble the rest of the ballroom hadn't entered. Samuel tilted his head, studying her with a gentleness she didn't remember from Charlotte. Or maybe she never noticed it before. The brightness of the event lights reflected in his eyes, highlighting something like curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite define. You look well, he said softly. Mia swallowed. Compliments shouldn't make her nervous, but this one did. Thanks. You too. Very CEO-ish. Samuel chuckled, a warm sound that tugged at memories neither of them had spoken about yet. It comes with the territory. She nodded quickly, stepping back half a pace. I should probably find my table. He hesitated. A brief pause, like he wanted to stop her, or say something more, or ask questions that were forming faster than he could organize them. His eyes landed on the way she held her folder, angled protectively, but he didn't ask. He didn't assume. He just took in the moment with quiet observation. Of course, he replied. Maybe we can talk again later. Catch up properly? Mia kept her expression steady, neutral, polite. We'll see how the schedule goes. Her tone wasn't cold, just guarded. Samuel noticed her warmth from Charlotte was not gone, but hidden. Something had changed. He felt it. He couldn't explain it, but it lingered in the air between them, like an unanswered question. Mia stepped away first, blending into the flow of attendees. She moved gracefully, but her heart was pounding hard enough that she felt it echo in her palms. As she walked to her assigned table, she forced a slow breath. Keep calm. Keep the truth quiet. Not here. Not now. Samuel remained where she left him, watching for a moment longer than he intended. His assistant approached with the keynote notes. Sir, you're needed on stage in 5 minutes. Samuel blinked, grounding himself back in the moment. Yes, I'm coming. But as he followed the staff toward the stage entrance, one thought repeated quietly in his mind. Why does it feel like she's hiding something from me? He didn't know the answer yet, but he knew this. Their reunion wasn't a coincidence. It was a beginning, and fate wasn't finished with either of them. The workshop resumed after the short break. and Mia took her seat, trying to appear composed. Her pulse, however, hadn't recovered from the unexpected reunion. She flipped through the program booklet, just to give her hands something to do. Though she barely registered any of the words printed on the page, her mind replayed everything from a few minutes earlier. Samuel's voice, the gentleness in his eyes, the concern he didn't even try to hide, and the way he looked at her stomach for that split second. Not long enough to alarm anyone, but long enough for her to feel exposed. She pressed her palm against her belly, not to hide, but to steady herself. Across the room, Samuel finished speaking with his assistant and moved toward a section of tables reserved for Foundation leaders. But even as he reviewed notes, shook hands, or acknowledged attendees, he kept stealing subtle glances in Mia's direction. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he kept looking anyway. As the next session ended, attendees began standing and stretching. Mia headed toward a hallway to get a moment alone. The ballroom's energy felt too bright, too pressing. She needed air. Just a few breaths without eyes on her. But fate had other plans. Mia, her steps slowed before she turned. Samuel approached her again, this time without the distraction of the crowd. His expression wasn't the polished one he used for public events. It was softer, more personal. The same expression he wore that night near the plant in Charlotte. "I'm glad I caught you before the next session," he said. She forced a small smile. "Workshops move fast. Exactly why I wanted a minute." A minute, just 1 minute with him, suddenly felt too heavy. He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice so no one else would hear. "I didn't expect to see you today. Not in a million years. But I'm really glad you're here." Her breath caught again. She didn't expect those words, not from him, not delivered with such sincerity that it made her heart soften in ways she wasn't prepared for. "I didn't expect to be here either," she admitted carefully. Samuel studied her face, the slight tension in her jaw, the way she shifted her weight, the guarded look in her eyes. He remembered how open she had been in Charlotte, how effortlessly she laughed, how comfortable she seemed. Today felt different. "Mia, are you all right?" he asked gently. She hesitated. This was the moment truth brushed close to the edge. Almost, but not yet. Mia opened her mouth slightly, searching for a safe answer. The truth pressed against her throat like a rising tide. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady and persistent. "I'm fine," she finally said, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Samuel didn't buy it. His brow furrowed a little. "You seem different." "Different how?" she asked carefully. He paused, choosing his words with intention. "You seem guarded, as if something is weighing on you." Then, more softly, "And you didn't look guarded the night we met." That night, Charlotte, the tacos, the laughter, the warm comfort of a stranger who didn't feel like a stranger at all. Mia's breath shook slightly. "I've had a lot going on," she said. He nodded slowly, accepting the answer but not understanding it fully. "I get that," he said. "Life hasn't exactly been simple for me lately, either." He tried to lighten the mood with a small grin. Though no one ever believes CEOs have problems, she chuckled softly, despite herself. "No, they don't. People think all you do is drink fancy coffee and sign papers." "Exactly," he replied with a smile. "But honestly, I've thought about that night more than I expected to." Her heart skipped just once, but it was enough. She didn't respond immediately. If she did, she wasn't sure what would slip out. Gratitude, fear, truth, or the confession she'd been swallowing for months. Samuel cleared his throat, sensing the heaviness of her silence. "Mia, if something's wrong, you can tell me." Then, almost whispering, "Did I do something? Did I hurt you without realizing?" Her chest tightened. The sincerity in his voice made her stomach twist. "No," she said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Then what is it?" She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Her hand drifted toward her stomach instinctively, almost unconsciously. When she realized the movement, she quickly crossed her arms instead. Too late for him to miss it. His eyes followed the movement, reading it more closely this time. "Mia," he said slowly, voice dropping. "Are you okay? Physically. I mean, She froze. This was the closest the truth had ever been to spilling out. Right there between them. Fragile and trembling. "I'm fine," she repeated, though her voice was softer now. Less sturdy. Samuel watched her carefully. Too carefully. He didn't know what the truth was. But he knew she was hiding something important. Something that mattered. Before he could ask again, a voice called out across the hallway, "Mr. Harrington, we need you backstage." The moment broke. Samuel turned slightly as the foundation assistant approached, holding a clipboard and wearing an expression of urgency. "Mr. Harrington, the keynote segment begins in 2 minutes. The tech team needs your final approval." He nodded instinctively, but his eyes stayed on Mia, searching, questioning, quietly pleading for the conversation not to end here. Mia stepped back before he could speak again. "You should go. They're waiting for you." He hesitated, just long enough to confirm that leaving her in this moment didn't sit right with him. "I'll come find you afterward," he said gently. She forced a polite smile. "Focus on your speech, Mia." He began, wanting to say more, but the assistant stepped closer. "Sir, we really need you now." Samuel inhaled slowly, holding back whatever words hovered unspoken. Then he nodded and walked away, though he glanced back once, an unmistakable sign that he was not done with this conversation. When he disappeared behind the stage doors, Mia exhaled so deeply it felt like her entire chest loosened. For a moment, the hallway around her blurred. The voices of attendees, the clatter of organizers setting up the next segment, the rush of staff moving in coordinated lines. Everything felt distant. She touched her stomach again. "I almost told him," she whispered. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. The truth had risen to the surface so quickly that it startled her. If the assistant hadn't interrupted, she didn't know what she might have confessed, and that scared her. Not because Samuel was unkind, not because he was wealthy, not because he was intimidating, but because telling him meant stepping into a life where nothing would ever be simple again. She wasn't ready for that. Not yet. When Samuel reached backstage, he barely heard the tech team's questions. His thoughts weren't on the microphones or screens. They were back in the hallway with Mia, with the flicker of worry in her eyes, the guarded tone in her voice, and the way she pulled her arms across her stomach as if shielding something precious. He felt it deep in his chest. She's hiding something important. But what? And why from him? His assistant nudged his elbow. "Sir, they're ready for you." Samuel nodded, cleared his throat, and stepped onto the stage. Outwardly composed, inwardly restless, he delivered the opening remarks flawlessly, but every word he spoke felt like it echoed around a question he couldn't shake. What happened to Mia after that night? And more importantly, why does it feel like the answer is standing right in front of him, waiting to be revealed? Mia slipped quietly into the ballroom as Samuel spoke, choosing a seat near the back. She watched him address the crowd with ease, charisma, and authority. The polished confidence of a man born into a world of expectations. Their worlds had collided once. Now they were circling each other again, and the truth between them was growing. The workshop had ended hours ago, but Samuel still sat in his office long after the building emptied. His jacket lay folded across the arm of his chair, his tie loosened, the top button of his shirt undone. He had delivered a flawless keynote, handled press questions, congratulated attendees, and maintained the polished composure expected of him. But none of that matched the restlessness sitting in his chest. He couldn't focus, couldn't settle, couldn't shake the feeling that Mia's presence meant something he wasn't seeing clearly yet. Every time he closed his eyes, he replayed the moments from earlier. Her guarded smile, her answer that wasn't really an answer, the way she shifted her body as if shielding herself, the flicker of discomfort when he asked if she was okay. A quiet voice inside him whispered that something had changed in her life, something she wasn't ready to say out loud. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk, fingers pressed to his temples. "Why is she avoiding me?" he murmured. It wasn't ego, it wasn't hurt pride. It was confusion, and something deeper he didn't want to name yet. His assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Sir? You're still here?" "Yes," he said absently, closing up. The assistant stepped closer. "Anything you need?" Samuel hesitated. The request forming in his mind wasn't one he usually made, but he couldn't ignore the pull tugging at him. "Can you bring me the list of consultants who attended today?" The assistant blinked. "Yes, of course. Right away." Within minutes, the folder was in front of him. Samuel flipped through it slowly, telling himself it was simple curiosity, nothing more. But when he reached the M section and saw her full name printed neatly across the page, he paused. There she was, not just Mia, the woman from Charlotte, but Mia, the respected consultant, a professional in her field, someone who had earned her invitation. He tapped the folder gently. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" he whispered to the empty room. The more he stared at her name, the more the pieces nudged against one another. Nothing fully connecting, but nothing letting him rest either. He opened his laptop, typed her name into a search bar, watched results appear, her consulting website, her reviews, her past projects. But something caught his attention. Her recent work showed a noticeable gap, a pause, a slowing down. Not long after Charlotte, his pulse shifted. Something aligned. Not clearly, but enough to make the truth whisper louder. He wasn't imagining it. She was avoiding him. Samuel leaned back in his chair, the glow from his laptop reflecting off his features. He scrolled through Mia's consulting profile. Photos of events she had redesigned. Testimonials praising her talent. Her ability to transform a room. Her reputation for kindness and professionalism. "She's good," he murmured, a small smile touching his lips. "Really good." But the smile faded as he continued reading. Her recent updates slowed significantly after Charlotte. Her schedule showed fewer bookings. Her online presence grew quieter. Not because of failure, not because of controversy, because something personal must have shifted. He didn't know what it was, but he felt the truth brushing close. He closed the laptop slowly, exhaling through his nose. His office felt too quiet, too still, too filled with thoughts he didn't want to name. For years, Samuel had lived inside pressures that never eased. Legacy expectations, board scrutiny, media eyes, a family name he was born into but never felt fully aligned with. Responsibility carved lines in him he never spoke about. What he lacked was something simple, connection that didn't come with conditions. That night in Charlotte gave him a glimpse of it. Not because it was romantic or dramatic, but because it was unplanned, genuine, and free of weight. Mia didn't treat him like a CEO. She didn't treat him like a public figure. She treated him like a human being. And today, seeing her again stirred something quiet but undeniable. A pull, a curiosity he couldn't dismiss, a concern he didn't expect to feel. He rubbed his jaw slowly. "Why won't you look me in the eyes the way you did that night?" he whispered. The question carried more emotion than he intended. The next morning, Samuel arrived at work earlier than usual, hoping routine would ground him. It didn't. He spent the first half hour rereading emails he'd already answered. His assistant entered with a daily schedule. "Sir, the team meeting begins in 15 minutes, and we need approval on the new lobby design for Raleigh." Samuel nodded. "Set the designs on my desk." "Yes, sir." The assistant hesitated, then added, "You seemed distracted yesterday. Is everything all right?" Samuel paused his pen mid-air. "Just a lot on my mind." The assistant nodded politely and left, but the statement lingered. A lot on his mind, more than he wanted to admit. He should have been focused on expansion plans, design proposals, and board expectations. Instead, one thought pushed through everything else. Mia was avoiding him, and he needed to know why. Samuel tried to push the curiosity aside. He told himself he was overthinking. He told himself that Mia had every right to live her life without explaining anything to him. They had only shared one night. They weren't together. They weren't even close friends. But logic didn't calm the feeling in his chest. Later that afternoon, while going through design proposals with his team, his mind drifted again. Not to business. Not to expansion. Not to investors. It drifted to the way Mia held her folder yesterday, pressed tight against her stomach. To the way she spoke carefully, as if guarding herself. To the moment she stepped away from him faster than she meant to. He excused himself from the meeting. His managers exchanged confused glances as he walked out, but no one dared question the CEO mid-step. Samuel stepped into the hallway, ran a hand through his hair, and let out a frustrated sigh. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Why can't I let this go?" The answer didn't come in words. It came in a sinking realization that formed quietly, because she mattered more than he had admitted to himself. He had met thousands of people through work, attended hundreds of networking events, shared polite conversations with countless strangers, but none of them stayed with him the way Mia had. Something about her warmth, something about her honesty, something about her laugh. Real, unpolished, free. And yesterday, something about her silence. He wasn't imagining her discomfort. He wasn't imagining the distance. He wasn't imagining the shift. He felt it deeply, like a thread connecting them had tightened with tension he didn't understand. He finally gave in. He opened her consulting website again and clicked on the contact page. He read her business email twice, then a third time. He hovered over his keyboard, unsure of what message he could send that wouldn't sound strange coming from him. Should he check on her? Request a consultation? Pretend it was work-related? Say nothing at all? He closed the laptop with a frustrated thud. He didn't want to approach her through lies or excuses, but he also wasn't ready to ask the real question out loud. Mia, what happened to you after that night? A light tap sounded at his door again. Sir, his assistant called, your afternoon appointment has arrived. I'll be there in a minute. He straightened his tie, smoothed his shirt, and walked toward the boardroom, but his thoughts stayed behind, circling quietly around one truth. He needed answers, and he needed them sooner than he realized, because whatever Mia was hiding, it wasn't small, and it wasn't going away. Mia sat on her living room couch with a pillow clutched to her stomach, her mind spinning so fast she barely heard the television murmuring in the background. Seeing Samuel again had shaken her more than she expected. Not because she feared him. She didn't. Not because he was powerful. That didn't intimidate her nearly as much as people assumed. It was the connection. The same quiet, warm familiarity she felt in Charlotte was still there, still alive, still dangerous. She rubbed her belly slowly. Why now? She whispered. Why did fate put him in my path again before I figured out how to handle this? Before she could drown in her thoughts, she heard loud knocking and an even louder voice from her porch. Mia! Open this door before I burn my fingers knocking. She closed her eyes. Only one cousin in all of Durham had that kind of dramatic energy. Mia opened the door, and her cousin burst in holding a box of hot wings. You didn't answer your phone, her cousin announced, dropping the box on the table. So I assumed you were either asleep, crying, or eating something weird again. I was thinking, Mia muttered. Same thing as crying, her cousin replied, plopping onto the couch. Now talk. You saw the man? Mia sank beside her with a long sigh. I saw him. And nothing, Mia said. He didn't do anything wrong. He was him. Her cousin narrowed her eyes. That him sounded loaded. Mia pulled the pillow tighter. He remembered me. He talked to me like... She stopped, searching for the right words. Like Charlotte wasn't just a random night. Her cousin's eyebrows shot up. He what? Oh, this is getting good. It's not good, Mia whispered. It's complicated. Everything in your life is complicated, except your cravings. Those are loud and clear. Mia groaned. Can you be serious for 2 seconds? I am serious, her cousin said, leaning forward. You need to tell him. No, I don't, Mia replied quickly. Too quickly. You do, her cousin insisted. Girl, this isn't a lost earring. You're carrying a whole human. A man has the right to know. Mia felt a tug in her chest. Guilt, fear, truth, all tangled together. It's not that simple. It is, her cousin countered. You're scared. Mia didn't answer, because silence was easier than admitting her cousin was right. Her cousin folded her arms, staring at Mia like she was waiting for a confession. Mia, you're scared, she repeated softly now, the teasing gone from her voice. Mia sank deeper into the couch. Of course I'm scared. Look at the situation. Look at him. He's not just some guy working down the street. He's Samuel, a whole CEO, a billionaire, a man who lives a life I can't even imagine. Her cousin nodded slowly. Okay, valid points. But you're not telling me the real fear. Mia's fingers tightened around the pillow. She stared down at her belly. The real fear, she whispered, is that he'll think I'm after him, that I planned this, that I'm trying to trap him. Her cousin's expression softened. Mia, Absolutely no one who knows you would ever think that. And he seemed decent when you told us about that night. He was, Mia murmured. So what's the real problem? Mia fought the tears forming at the corners of her eyes. I don't know what his reaction will be. I don't know if he'll be kind or cold. I don't know if this will ruin my peace. I don't know if walking into his world will swallow me whole. Her cousin grew quiet, and then, after a long moment, she asked gently, "Do you want him involved?" The question pierced deep. Did she? Did she want Samuel in her life? In her child's life? In her family's world? She didn't know. Not truly. I just want to protect my baby, Mia whispered. And myself, her cousin nodded. And you're doing a good job. But protecting yourself doesn't mean running from the truth. Mia closed her eyes. Her cousin leaned forward suddenly. Okay. So, option 1, you tell him face to face. Option 2, you text him. Option 3, you send an email. Option 4, my favorite, you write a letter. A real letter. Old school. Honest. Safe. No interruptions. No panic. A letter? Mia repeated. Yes. A letter, her cousin said proudly. Put everything in writing. Explain the night, the timing, the truth. Give him space to react without you standing there shaking. Mia thought about it. A letter gave distance, time, control. It might even help her sort out her thoughts. Her cousin nudged her. You're thinking about it. That means it's a good idea. Mia didn't deny it this time. I might consider it, she whispered. Her cousin grinned. Good. Now pass me those hot wings. I'm starving. Later that evening, after her cousin left with empty wing boxes and loud advice echoing down the driveway, the house fell quiet again. Mia stood at her kitchen counter, staring at a blank sheet of paper and a pen she'd placed there 30 minutes ago. The idea of writing a letter sounded simple in conversation. But the moment she sat down to do it, her hands refused to move. How do you start a letter to a man who doesn't know he's about to become a father? How do you explain that one night changed everything without sounding like you planned it? How do you protect your heart while telling a truth that could alter his entire life? She exhaled deeply and sat down. Okay, she whispered. Just try. She picked up the pen. At the top of the page, she wrote, Samuel, there's something I need to tell you. Her hand stalled again, not because she didn't know what to write, because the weight of the truth finally settled in the room with her. She imagined his face, his reaction, his disbelief, his questions, his voice asking, why didn't you tell me sooner? She imagined worst cases, not because she believed Samuel was unkind, but because uncertainty loved to paint the darkest pictures. I can't finish this right now, she whispered, pushing the pen away. She folded the unfinished letter gently and slid it into the drawer beside her. Not thrown away, not forgotten, just waiting for the moment she felt brave enough to complete it. Hours later, Mia found herself lying awake, one hand on her belly, the other gripping her pillow. Her thoughts circled in quiet loops, heavy, emotional, yet laced with humor, the way her life always was. I can't believe I might have to tell a billionaire he's about to be someone's daddy, she muttered. This child is going to grow up hearing a wild origin story. Her eyes softened. Despite the fear, she laughed. A small, warm sound. Then the laughter faded. Do I tell him? She whispered. Do I? Let him in. Her heart responded before her mind did. You can't hide forever, she sighed. Not helpful. Heart? Not helpful at all. The internal war wasn't ending tonight. If anything, it was becoming louder, pulling her in two directions, one rooted in fear, the other rooted in honesty. She didn't know which path she would take, not yet, but she knew this. Truth had begun knocking softly, and soon she would have to open the door. 3 days passed, but Mia's mind stayed stuck on the workshop, on Samuel's eyes searching, her face, on the softness in his voice, on his quiet question, Are you all right? She replayed the moment so many times she wondered if her memory was exaggerating it. But every time she tried to move forward, something in her heart pulled her back. She avoided going out too much. Work felt heavy. Her cravings got louder. And every night she opened that drawer, looked at the unfinished letter, and closed the drawer again. Not yet, she whispered each time. Not yet. But soon. She just didn't expect soon to arrive without warning. It happened on a Wednesday morning at a hotel in downtown Durham, one of Mia's consulting gigs. The manager had hired her to redesign the lobby flow because guests kept complaining about the confusing layout. Mia walked in with her usual tote bag, her notepad, her measuring tape, and her growing belly that she covered with a loose, flowing top. She was ready to work. She was not ready for Samuel, but life didn't ask her opinion. As she stood in the middle of the lobby, analyzing the furniture spacing, she heard footsteps and a familiar voice speaking to the hotel staff. Her heart stopped. No. No, no, no. Not here. Not today. She slowly turned her head. There he was. Samuel walked through the lobby with effortless authority, shaking hands with the manager, asking polite questions about guest satisfaction, completely unaware she was just a few steps away, frozen in place like someone had pressed pause on her entire existence. The manager noticed her. Oh, Samuel, this is the consultant I was telling you about. She's excellent. Truly transformed our guest experience. Samuel turned. His voice caught in his throat. Mia. She swallowed hard. Hi, Samuel. The manager grinned, unaware of the tension between them. Oh, you two know each other? Samuel didn't break eye contact with her. Yes, he said quietly. We've met. Mia's pulse hammered so loudly, she wondered if everyone could hear it. She forced a composed smile, even though her stomach flipped. Being in a professional environment didn't help. Being pregnant didn't help. Being unprepared definitely didn't help. Samuel excused the manager gently and stepped closer. Mia, he said, voice low. Why did you run out so quickly at the workshop? Her breath hitched. The question sliced right through her guard. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Not yet. Not now. Not here. Samuel stepped closer, lowering his voice so the nearby staff wouldn't overhear. You left so fast, he said, eyes searching her expression. I turned around and you were gone. Did I say something wrong? Mia shook her head quickly. No, you didn't do anything. Then what happened? He asked gently. She swallowed, trying to buy time. Everything in her felt tangled. Fear, honesty, guilt, longing, confusion. She hated how easily he could read her, even when she tried to hide every emotion behind a practiced smile. It was just a lot, she whispered. A lot? He repeated, waiting for more. Mia shifted her tote bag in front of her stomach without fully realizing she was doing it. Samuel's eyes flickered briefly toward the movement, then back to her face. Curious, concerned, trying to piece together something she wasn't ready to give voice to. You seem different, he said softly. I felt like you were holding something back. Her pulse jumped. Her hands tightened around the straps of her tote. Mia, did something happen that night? The words landed like a weight dropped onto the center of her chest. Everything inside her stilled. Her eyes snapped to his. There was no accusation in his voice, no anger, no expectation, just quiet sincerity. But sincerity could be dangerous when you were holding the biggest truth of your life behind your ribs. She started, her throat tightening. Samuel leaned in a fraction, not pushing, just close enough for her to feel how serious he was. You can tell me, he added. Her heart cracked open for a split second, just enough for the truth to rise to the edge of her tongue. Samuel. Her voice trembled. The baby fluttered inside her, as if reminding her that the truth wasn't hers alone. His eyes softened. Mia, it's okay. Whatever it is. She looked at him, really looked, at the man who brought laughter into a night she never expected, at the man tied to her future without knowing it. She inhaled. Her lips parted. This was it. The moment truth moved closer than ever. But panic shot through her like a spark, shaking her resolve. She stepped back. I can't, she whispered. Samuel blinked, thrown off. Mia, I need to finish my report, she said abruptly, her voice uneven. We can talk later. She turned away quickly, before her emotions betrayed her in public. But Samuel wasn't fooled. He knew she wasn't avoiding work. She was avoiding him, and that realization tightened something inside him. Something he couldn't name but refused to ignore. Mia hurried down the hallway, her footsteps uneven, her throat tight. She didn't know whether she wanted to cry, breathe, or disappear. Every emotion sat too close to the surface, threatening to spill over if she let even 1 second of stillness touch her. She reached a service corridor and paused, leaning one hand against the cool wall, her eyes shut. Her stomach rose and fell with shallow breaths. "Not now, please not now," she whispered to herself. The baby shifted again, a tiny, undeniable reminder of the truth she was guarding. A truth that had almost slipped. A truth that had nearly reached Samuel's ears. She pressed a hand over her stomach, grounding herself. "You're okay," she whispered. "Mama's just figuring this out." On the other side of the hallway, Samuel remained where she'd left him, watching the direction she'd gone with a quiet intensity. His assistant called his name twice, but he didn't respond. Instead, he replayed her expression, the way her eyes widened, the tremble in her voice, the way she shielded her midsection without even noticing. Something wasn't adding up, something important. He wasn't a man who chased emotions. His world required logic, strategy, projection, control. But with Mia, none of those tools seemed to apply. He felt instead something rare for him, a pull toward truth, a need to understand, a sense that whatever she was carrying was heavier than he imagined. He finally stepped away from the event space, hands in his pockets, eyes narrowed in thought. In his chest, a suspicion began to form, faint, incomplete, but persistent enough to unsettle him. He told himself not to jump to conclusions. But he also knew Mia wasn't someone who hid things casually. Her entire presence at the workshop felt unsteady, like she was balancing 2 lives at once. He exhaled slowly. "I need to talk to her again," he murmured to himself. Not out of ego, not out of curiosity alone, but because this wasn't just a passing encounter anymore. Something had changed between them. He could feel it, and he wasn't leaving Raleigh without answers. Back in the staff corridor, Mia pushed herself upright, wiped the corner of her eye, and straightened her blazer. "This secret is going to come out," she whispered. "I just need to be ready." But the truth? She wasn't ready at all. And Samuel was getting closer to discovering everything. The morning after the event, the Harrington Foundation building buzzed with its usual polished rhythm, staff moving with quiet efficiency, doors opening and closing, whispered updates being exchanged in the hallways. But Samuel walked through those same corridors with a mind that refused to quiet itself. Mia's face from the night before kept replaying in the back of his thoughts, interrupting even the most basic tasks. He had slept poorly, tossing through the gaps of a mind, trying to decode something that refused to fully reveal itself. She had run from him, not angrily, not dismissively, but out of something that looked a lot like fear. He felt it, he saw it, and the feeling sat heavy in his chest. He arrived early to prepare for the second day of workshops, keeping his usual calm exterior. But staff members around him could tell his focus wasn't as sharp as it normally was. His assistant even asked twice if he needed coffee, something he never forgot to drink on his own. He didn't answer the second time. Instead, he found himself standing near the side entrance, glancing toward the elevator as if waiting for Mia's arrival. He didn't want to admit he was looking for her, but his body betrayed him before his mind could deny it. Across the lobby, 2 staff members were speaking in soft conversation. He wasn't listening at first. Their words were distant background noise to his restless thoughts, until one sentence cut through everything. "Yeah, she'll need maternity accommodations soon. They said she's starting leave later this year." Samuel froze completely. His hand, still on his tablet, went still mid-motion. Maternity? He didn't turn toward the staff directly. He stayed still, listening without appearing nosy. They continued talking casually. "I think she's one of the consultants. Pretty sure her name is Mia. Sweet lady. Quiet, works efficiently, even while expecting." Every muscle in Samuel's body went tense. Mia. Expecting. The word hit him so hard that he felt a slow, heavy pressure spread through his chest, like someone had quietly pulled the ground out from under him. He swallowed. Once, twice. His breath stilled as the timeline, the dates, the memories, lined up with crushing precision. Charlotte, the mixer, the tacos, the night he spent with her, the night he promised himself he wouldn't overthink. The night that now carried consequences he never even imagined. His heart didn't speed up. It stopped, suspended in silent realization. It aligned. Everything aligned. And Samuel had to grip the tablet tighter to keep his hand from shaking. Samuel stood completely still, as if any movement would make the realization louder. The conversation between the two staff members drifted on, harmless to them, but explosive inside his mind. He didn't hear anything else they said. Their voices blurred into muffled sound while his own thoughts sharpened into a single, undeniable point. Mia is pregnant. Mia is avoiding him. Mia's due time frame matches the night they shared. His breath left him in a slow, controlled exhale, the kind a man releases when a truth breaks open all at once. He tried to steady himself, but even that felt impossible. His world, usually structured and predictable, now tilted at an angle he had never experienced. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't even afraid. What flooded him instead was something deeper, a weight in his chest mixed with shock, confusion, and an ache he couldn't quite name. He pressed a hand lightly against the back of his neck and closed his eyes briefly. If this was true, if the child she carried was his, then Mia had been walking through all this alone. That thought did something to him. It reached somewhere inside him that he kept locked away. A place where responsibility wasn't about business deals or financial obligations, but about people, real ties, real connections he never expected to have. He opened his eyes again, grounding himself in the present moment. He needed to confirm it, not through assumptions or staff whispers, but from her. He needed to hear her speak the truth herself, and he needed to do it without raising his voice, without accusation, without anything that would make her feel cornered. Mia was not someone he wanted to hurt, not in the slightest. Across the lobby, the elevator doors opened, and she stepped out. Mia walked slowly, one hand resting near her side, the other holding her folder. She looked tired, a little pale, but still carried that same quiet strength that had pulled him toward her in the first place. Their eyes met. For a brief second she froze. Her hand shifted instinctively closer to her stomach. Small, subtle, but enough for him to see. Samuel's breath caught. That one gesture connected every dot he had been resisting. He didn't move aggressively. He didn't rush. He took one careful step forward. "Mia," he said, his voice steady but unmistakably changed. She hesitated. A slight, fearful blink, but didn't turn away. He approached a little closer, keeping space so she wouldn't feel trapped. "I need to talk to you," he said softly, "and I promise I'm not here to upset you." Her throat moved in a slow swallow. "About what?" she whispered. He held her gaze. "You already know," he said quietly. Mia's pulse thudded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Samuel's voice wasn't sharp, but something in it carried a weight she had been trying to outrun since the moment she found out she was pregnant. She forced a small breath into her lungs, steadying herself the way she always did when life approached too quickly. But nothing, not her family's loudness, not pregnancy exhaustion, not her late-night prayers, had prepared her for Samuel standing in front of her with that look in his eyes. "Mia," he repeated gently, "I just want to understand." She felt her fingers tighten around her folder, the edges pressing into her palm. "Understand what?" she asked, though her voice trembled slightly. Samuel didn't break eye contact. His expression held no anger, no pressure, only an ache of realization. "Your due date," he said quietly. "When I heard the staff mention your leave, the timing, it matches." Her stomach flipped. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't reaching. He had already pieced it together. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Words crowded her throat, but refused to come out. Samuel stepped a little closer, still careful, still respectful, still soft in his approach. "I'm not here to accuse you," he said. "I'm not here to corner you. I just need the truth." Mia's breath hitched. He shook his head slowly, voice lowering even further. "Did something happen that night that I should have known about?" he asked. "Something you didn't plan?" "Something I didn't plan either." Her chest tightened painfully. In his eyes, she saw a man confronting the possibility of fatherhood, not with panic, but with sincerity. And That made everything harder, because she had expected anger, or disbelief, or cold detachment. She had not expected gentleness. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Samuel, I didn't know how to tell you." He blinked, a flicker of emotion crossing his features. Relief, fear, hope, heartbreak, all layered in a single second. "Mia," he whispered, "are you saying—" She looked away, her breath unsteady. "I didn't want to ruin your life," she whispered, "and I didn't want you to think I wanted anything from you. I didn't know how to face you." Samuel's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with a deep, quiet ache. "You carrying this alone," he murmured. "You shouldn't have had to." Mia closed her eyes. Silence settled between them, heavy, trembling, and full of truth. This was the moment everything shifted. This was the climax that neither of them could run from anymore. The hallway felt too quiet after Mia's confession, as if the air itself paused to witness the moment she could no longer hide. Samuel didn't move right away. He stood there, absorbing her words, letting them settle in a way that didn't frighten her further. Mia kept her gaze lowered, breathing unevenly. She had carried this truth alone for months, and now that she had finally allowed it to surface, she felt exposed, like every insecurity in her life had stepped into the open with her. Samuel was the one who broke the silence first. "Mia," he said softly, "please look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her eyes, cautious and tired. Her lashes trembled from holding back emotions she refused to let spill in a professional hallway. "There's nothing about this that ruins my life," Samuel said, his voice low and steady. "Nothing." Mia sucked in a small breath, her shoulders tightening. "You say that now," she whispered, "but your world, your name, your family, your company, everything about your life is huge. Mine is simple. I didn't think I fit anywhere in that." "You're not giving yourself enough credit," he replied gently. She shook her head, pressing a hand over her stomach almost unconsciously. "I didn't want to be seen as someone coming after you. I didn't want the world to paint me as anything other than a woman who made a choice, a woman who took responsibility. I wasn't going to drag you into something you never asked for." His jaw relaxed, but the emotion in his eyes deepened. "Mia, I should have been told, even if it was hard. Even if you weren't sure how I'd react." She swallowed hard. "I was scared," she admitted. "Not of you. Of everything that comes with you. I saw your world from a distance, Samuel. You live in a place with reporters, investors, expectations, people who treat your name like a brand. I live in Durham, where people show up with a casserole when you sneeze wrong." That pulled a breathy, emotional laugh from him. Not at her, but in gentle recognition of their difference. "I didn't want my child dragged across two worlds that don't match," she said quietly. "And I didn't know if you wanted anything to do with either of us." Samuel stepped closer, slow, deliberate, respectful. "Mia," he said softly, "you should have told me. Not because of my last name, not because of my resources, but because this isn't just your journey. It's mine too." Her eyes glistened. This was the first time she saw not the hotel magnate, not the man from the news, but the man who had laughed with her at a taco truck, the one who'd made the night feel safe. The walls she'd built for months trembled. Mia leaned back slightly against the wall, as if the truth she had just released took a physical toll. Samuel noticed the strain in her expression and lowered his voice even more, careful not to overwhelm her. "You weren't supposed to handle this alone," he said. Mia gave a quiet, tired laugh, not mocking, but worn. "I've been handling things alone my whole life, Samuel. It's what I know. My family helps, sure, but they can't live inside my worries. I've always had to be the one who picks up the pieces." He took in that sentence, every layer of truth behind it. "When you left Charlotte that morning," Mia continued, "I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just a night, a moment, something I'd tuck away and move on from. I didn't expect anything from you. I didn't even expect to see you again. But when that test turned positive," she exhaled slowly, "my life flipped. And yours. Whether I liked it or not, it was going to flip too." Samuel nodded once, deeply, the realization settling further into him. "I understand why you were afraid," he said. "My world can be overwhelming, even for me." That made her meet his eyes again. Not to challenge him, but because she finally heard sincerity without any hidden motives. He shifted slightly, his voice steady, but carrying a note of regret. "I haven't been easy to read. I've spent years keeping people at a distance. My upbringing, the pressure, the expectations placed on me since childhood, they shape me into someone who avoids emotional ties because they always felt like weaknesses." Mia studied him quietly. "But you weren't a weakness," he added. "That night, it was the first time in a long time I felt like a person, not a brand." Something in Mia's face softened. "I didn't want to burden you," she whispered. "You already have so much on your shoulders, and I'm just me, a consultant from Durham trying to keep her life steady." "You're not just anything," Samuel said gently. "You're strong, you're grounded, and you're carrying a life we created together. That matters more than everything else." Her lips trembled, and she pressed a hand to her forehead. "I didn't want you to feel trapped." He stepped closer, still giving her control of the space. "I don't feel trapped. I feel responsible. And more than that, I feel connected to something real for the first time in years." Her breath caught. This was the first time anyone had spoken to her that way. Not out of pity, not out of panic, but out of genuine care. Slowly, the wall around her began to shift. Mia brushed her thumb against the folder she held, grounding herself the way she often did when emotions pressed too close. She wasn't used to being this vulnerable in front of anyone, especially not someone from Samuel's world. Yet here she was, unable to hide from a truth that had finally caught up to both of them. "Samuel," she began, but her voice faltered. "I didn't tell you because I thought it would complicate your life, and I don't want to be the reason anything in your world unravels." He shook his head gently. "My world has been complicated long before you stepped into it. You didn't create chaos. You brought honesty, even if it arrived later than I expected." She blinked hard, her breath hitching slightly. He continued, "You didn't hide out of selfishness. You hid because you were scared. That's human, Mia, and you don't owe anyone perfection." Her free hand slipped instinctively toward her stomach again, a quiet, protective gesture she barely noticed anymore. But Samuel noticed, and his expression softened even more. "How far along?" he asked, voice steady but tender. 6 months, she whispered. He inhaled, not sharply, not with shock, but with the heavy acceptance of a reality that now had shape, size, weight, and time attached to it. "Mia," he said quietly, "I want to be part of this. Not because I feel forced, not because of responsibility alone, but because this child is mine too, and you shouldn't have to shoulder everything alone." She looked away, her throat tightening again. "Being pregnant hasn't been the hard part," she murmured. "The hard part has been feeling like I had to walk through it, pretending I wasn't missing a piece of the story. Missing you." Those words struck something deep inside him. He stepped one pace closer, just enough to be near, not enough to overwhelm her. "I'm here now," he said. "If you'll let me be." She swallowed, torn between relief and fear. "You come from a world where people plan everything down to the last detail. I come from a world where you pray over things you can't control. I didn't think the two could mix." "They can," he answered softly, "if we're honest with each other." Her eyes glistened again. For the first time since the truth surfaced, she felt her shoulders ease. Not completely, but enough to breathe without feeling like she was standing on a ledge. Samuel didn't reach for her. He didn't demand anything. He simply stood there, offering presence instead of pressure, and that alone shifted something in her chest. Something hopeful. Something unexpected. The tension in the hallway had softened, replaced by something quieter. Not certainty, not comfort yet, but a shift. A beginning neither of them had expected to reach this quickly. Mia exhaled slowly, letting the rush of emotion steady itself into something she could manage. Samuel didn't press her for more answers. He waited with the kind of patience that showed he understood the weight she carried. His presence felt different now. Not the distant hotel magnate, not the stranger from Charlotte, but a man trying to stand beside her without taking over her steps. "I don't want to make decisions for you," Samuel said gently, "but I do want to make decisions with you." Mia blinked, trying to process the difference. "Those are two very different things," she murmured. "I know." He slipped his hands into his pockets, shoulders relaxing but voice still sincere. "I've spent most of my life being told what I should do. By advisors, by family, by the world watching me. I don't want to be that person with you. Or with our child." The word "our" hit her with unexpected force. She pressed her lips together, steadying the swell of emotion. "Samuel, I'm not trying to shut you out. I'm just trying to keep things from spinning out of control." His expression softened even more. "I understand that. But keeping me completely out, that's not control, Mia. That's fear talking." She looked away, not because he was wrong, but because he was right in a way she didn't know how to admit out loud. A moment passed, quiet but meaningful. Then Samuel asked, "What do you need from me right now? Not later. Not months from now. Right now." The question stunned her. Most people assumed he was asking. Mia let her free hand fall to her side, her voice honest and small. "I need space to adjust, but not distance. I need support, but not someone trying to run my life. And I need time before I introduce you to my family, because they're loud and loving and dramatic. And I need them to behave at least a little when you show up." A soft laugh escaped Samuel, warm, almost relieved. "I can handle loud and loving," he said. "The dramatic part, we'll see." Mia's lips curved, despite her exhaustion. For the first time since she discovered she was pregnant, she didn't feel alone in the moment. For the first time, someone else stood on the same emotional ground as her, and that changed everything. Mia shifted her weight slightly, still processing the reality that the man standing in front of her wasn't trying to overpower her choices, wasn't demanding control, wasn't panicking. He was meeting her where she stood. That alone softened something deep in her chest. Samuel watched her carefully, not reading her to judge her, but reading her to understand the pace she needed. "Your family," he began, choosing his words thoughtfully. "They sound like the kind of people who care with their whole hearts." Mia huffed a tiny laugh. "They do. Sometimes too much. They're going to have a reaction when they find out you're—" She stopped herself. He tilted his head slightly. "When they find out I'm—" "What?" Mia looked at him with a mix of humor and dread. "You know, you? The man with a company named after his last name? The man who has staff running around making sure a lobby plant is standing straight." He pressed his lips together to keep from smiling. "I can face your family," he said gently, "but we'll go at your pace." Those words, your pace, eased something she had been carrying since the moment she learned she was pregnant. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't being rushed into a future she hadn't prepared for. "I appreciate that," she whispered. A quiet moment settled between them, comfortable instead of tense. "What about you?" she asked softly. "This changes everything for you. Your time, your routine, your plans, your life." Samuel inhaled, then exhaled slowly. "Mia, my life hasn't felt like my own for a long time. Everything has been structured, predictable, controlled by schedules, meetings, expectations. But when I think about this, about our child, I feel something different, something real." Her eyes flickered with emotion. "I'm not prepared," Mia confessed. "Not emotionally, not financially, not even mentally sometimes. But I'm trying, every day, and I don't want to lose myself in the process." "You won't," Samuel said with quiet conviction, "and I won't let you carry all of this by yourself anymore." She studied him the way she studied hotel rooms when she was working, scanning for honesty, for intention, for cracks in the story. But he wasn't hiding anything. He wasn't running. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was present. Mia nodded slowly, letting the truth settle. "Okay," she whispered. "Then, let's figure this out together." Samuel's chest loosened, tension dropping from his shoulders. "Together," he repeated. And for the first time since Charlotte, neither of them stepped away. Mia took a slow breath, letting the weight of the moment settle. For months, She had braced herself against the possibility of doing everything alone. The appointments, the preparations, the emotional shifts, the fear of the unknown. But now, staring at Samuel, she realized she wasn't the only one standing in the hallway, holding a future neither of them had planned. He stepped slightly closer, but not enough to overwhelm her. Just enough to show he meant every word he had spoken. "So, what do we do now?" she asked quietly. Samuel didn't answer right away. He studied her expression, giving her the chance to speak first if she needed to. When she remained silent, he nodded. "First," he said gently, "we talk to your doctor together. I want to understand everything, not to take control, but so I know how to support you." That made her chest fall and rise in a softer rhythm. "And second," he continued, "we set boundaries. Ones you're comfortable with. I don't want to walk into your life and rearrange anything. I want to be involved in a way that respects what you've built." Mia brushed a tear from the corner of her eye with the back of her finger. Quick, almost embarrassed. "You're taking this better than I expected," she whispered. "I'm not ignoring the truth," he replied, "and I won't run from it." She nodded, swallowing gently. "My family is going to want to meet you. Not right away, but soon. They've been by my side through all of this. I need them to understand that you're here because you chose to be, not because you feel pressured." Samuel's expression warmed. "I'll meet them whenever you're ready, and I'll respect whatever timeline makes you feel safe." Another breath left her, this one steadier, calmer. "And what about your family?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened slightly, though not from fear, from history. "That's a conversation I'll handle. They don't get to set the tone for this. You and our child do." Her lips parted slightly in surprise. "Samuel." He offered a small, gentle smile, the kind she had only seen once before, during their late-night walk in Charlotte. "We're not going to have all the answers today," he said, "but we made one decision already." She tilted her head. "What decision?" "That neither of us is walking through this alone anymore." The words wrapped around her like something warm and steady. Not a promise of perfection, not a dramatic declaration, just truth spoken plainly. For the first time since she saw the positive test, Mia felt a small spark of hope settle in her chest. Not certainty, not comfort, but hope. Quiet, real, and ready to grow. And that was enough to carry them into the next chapter of their story. Mia never thought she would see the day when Samuel, the same man whose name appeared in hotel industry articles and business segments, would stand on her mother's porch in Durham with a grocery bag in one hand and an uncertain smile on his face. Yet here he was, shifting his weight slightly like a man bracing for a storm he hoped would be friendly. Mia stood beside him, arms folded gently over her stomach as she took a quiet breath. "I should warn you," she murmured. "My family has enthusiasm." Samuel gave a small, hopeful smile. "I can handle enthusiasm." "You say that now," she replied under her breath. Before he could respond, the front door swung open without warning. "Mia," her auntie boomed, pulling her into a half-hug before she even finished stepping forward. "Baby, you didn't tell us he was coming today. We would have swept the walkway. We would have wiped the mailbox." Mia closed her eyes briefly. "Here it begins." Her auntie's attention shifted to Samuel, who straightened slightly, as though preparing for an interview panel. "Oh," she said, looking him up and down with theatrical judgment. "You must be the man who caused my niece all this stress." Samuel blinked. Her auntie raised a hand. "Hush. Don't speak yet. Let me look at you." Mia covered her face. Her mother appeared next, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Lord have mercy, Mia. You didn't prepare us. I'm wearing my house clothes." "You look fine, Mama." Mia sighed. Samuel offered a polite nod. "It's very nice to meet you." Her mother raised an eyebrow. "Mia told us you were coming from Raleigh. You bring anything?" He lifted the grocery bag, slightly embarrassed, but trying. "I brought a peach cobbler from the bakery down the street." Every female relative froze. Her auntie snapped her head toward Mia. "Girl, he brought cobbler." Her mother narrowed her eyes at Samuel. "You know how to win a black household, don't you?" Samuel hesitated. "I do now?" Her auntie broke into a grin. "Come on in." But don't touch anything till we decide if we like you." Mia groaned. Samuel gave her a glance, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, silently communicating, "I'm okay." Really. For the first time, Mia felt the tension inside her loosen. Just a little. The living room was already warm with conversation by the time Samuel stepped inside. Family photos lined the walls. Graduations, Sunday cookouts, holiday gatherings. Pieces of Mia's world that told a story far richer than any luxury suite he'd ever walked through. It felt lived in, loved in, and honest. Mia's cousin plopped onto the couch, arms crossed, eyes narrowed in theatrical interrogation. "So this is him, huh?" Mia sighed. "Please, don't start." "I'm not starting," her cousin replied. "I'm just observing." Samuel cleared his throat politely. "Hello." Her cousin didn't blink. "So tell me, Samuel, you got common sense? Or do we need to explain what that is?" Mia nearly choked. "Ashley," Samuel answered calmly, "I'd like to think so, but I'm open to feedback." That earned him a grudging nod. "You all right?" Ashley muttered. "For now." Mia's mother called from the kitchen. "Y'all quit scaring that man. Let him sit down and get comfortable." Samuel took a seat beside Mia. Not too close, not too far, letting her set the tone. She noticed and appreciated it more than she expected. He wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to charm. He was simply being present in her world. Her auntie hovered near him, like an inspector general. "Now, Samuel, do you eat soul food?" He nodded gently. "Yes, ma'am." She squinted. "Do you season it? Or do you just pray over it?" Mia buried her face in her hands. "Mama, I cannot do this today." But Samuel actually smiled. A real one. "I do season it, though I'm prepared to be educated." Her auntie grinned, slapped the side of the counter, and hollered, "He's teachable." That's all we needed to hear. Laughter rippled across the room. Mia felt her shoulders drop, tension loosening one thread at a time. For months, she had feared this moment. She worried her worlds would clash, that Samuel would sit stiffly, and her family would overwhelm him. Yet here he was, taking jokes, answering questions, adapting in a way that felt genuine. And when Mia glanced at him, she found him already looking at her with a softness that made her throat tighten. He wasn't lost. He wasn't uncomfortable. He was trying. For her, for the baby, for whatever this new path might become. The room buzzed with laughter and small talk. But inside Mia's chest, a quiet realization bloomed. Samuel wasn't just showing up. He was learning how to stay. Dinner was louder than anything Samuel was used to. Plates clinking, overlapping conversations, jokes being tossed from one end of the table to the other. But instead of shrinking under the noise, he found himself observing it with quiet appreciation. There was warmth here, a closeness he hadn't grown up with. Mia watched him from across the table, studying his reactions carefully. Would he flinch at her family's bluntness? Would he tighten at the unfiltered humor? Would he retreat into the polished calm of his corporate world? But no. He sat with shoulders relaxed, posture open, and eyes attentive, as if he wanted to soak up every detail. Her mother pointed a fork at him. "So, Samuel, you were raised where again? Hotel hallways? Boardrooms? Fancy lawns where nobody touches the grass?" Samuel blinked, caught mid-bite. "Some of that is accurate." Her cousin snorted out a laugh. "I knew it." Mia shook her head. "Y'all are too much." But Samuel didn't seem bothered. "I grew up around business meetings more than dinner tables," he admitted. "A lot of structure. A lot of rules." Her mother narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. "Well, baby, you're in a different kind of structure now. Here, the only rule is, you eat what's on your plate." He offered a small smile. "I can follow that." Mia noticed something. A softness around his eyes she hadn't seen before. He wasn't just participating, he was adjusting, letting himself open in a way he rarely did. After dinner, as the family cleared plates, Samuel stepped aside with Mia near the doorway. She rested a hand on her stomach, instinctively protective, even in her own home. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Overwhelmed," she admitted. "But in a good way." He nodded. "Your family is incredible. They're loud, they're genuine," he countered softly. "It's different from what I'm used to." She She tilted her head, studying him. You handled it well. I wanted to. His voice lowered. Because this isn't just about showing up once. It's about learning your life. Learning what matters to you. Her breath caught. I don't expect you to be perfect, she said. I just need consistency, and you'll have it, he replied without hesitation. It wasn't a dramatic promise. It wasn't a rushed declaration. It was grounding. A steady commitment spoken from a man who meant every word. For the first time, Mia felt something shift inside her. Trust. Not blind trust. Not rushed trust. But the beginning of it, and that was enough to close the night with something neither of them had felt in months. Hope. The next week arrived with the softness of early morning light. The kind that makes everything feel a little gentler than the day before. Mia stood in the waiting room of her clinic, one hand resting on her lower back, the other gently cupping her belly as she breathed through a familiar wave of pressure. She wasn't alone. Samuel stood beside her, quiet but present, dressed not in one of his tailored suits, but in a simple dark sweater and jeans, a deliberate choice to match the tone of her world, rather than the polished one he normally lived in. You good? He asked softly. Pregnant, she replied dryly. So, no. But also yes. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I'll take that as a manageable. Mia huffed a small laugh, despite herself. The clinic receptionist called her name, and Mia felt that old instinct rise, the one that told her to walk ahead, handle things alone, stay self-reliant. But Samuel's hand hovered near the small of her back, not touching, not assuming, just letting her know he was there, if she needed support. For the first time, she didn't walk ahead alone. Inside the exam room, the medical technician prepared the monitor, while Mia got settled on the reclined table. Samuel stood near her side, not too close, not too far, letting her decide how much space she needed. Do you want me over here? He asked quietly. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Yes. He moved to her side, without hesitation. The technician pressed the cold gel against Mia's stomach. Mia inhaled sharply. Samuel's eyes flickered in concern, but she waved lightly. It's fine, she said. Just cold. Moments later, the room filled with a sound Mia had heard before, but this time it felt different. The heartbeat, strong, rhythmic, steady. Samuel's breath hitched, the smallest, unguarded gasp, as though the sound reached somewhere in him he didn't expect. That's, his voice caught. That's our child? Mia's eyes softened. Yes. He didn't speak for a long moment. His gaze stayed locked on the monitor, but the emotion on his face wasn't confusion or fear. It was awe, pure, quiet awe. I've been in rooms worth millions, he whispered, but I've never felt anything like this. Mia blinked hard, her throat tightening, and in that moment, in that small, softly lit exam room, the distance between their two worlds shrank just a little more. The technician stepped out with a polite smile, leaving Mia and Samuel alone in the soft hum of the exam room. The monitor still glowed faintly beside them, showing the small, fluttering life that had suddenly tied their two worlds together in a way neither expected. Mia wiped the gel from her stomach, her movements slow, thoughtful. Samuel remained quiet beside her, not distant, not unsure, just overwhelmed in a way he wasn't used to showing. You okay? Mia asked softly. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the screen. It's strange, he murmured. I've spent years making decisions about buildings, investments, expansions, but none of it ever felt like this. She waited, sensing something deeper behind his words. He exhaled slowly. In my world, everything has always been structured, calculated, controlled. I grew up around adults who didn't talk about emotions unless it was related to business risks or public image. Even as a kid, I learned how to sit straight at dinner tables and keep conversations polite. There wasn't warmth. Mia's brows softened. You didn't have people around you showing affection? He gave a small shrug. Not in a way you'd recognize. My mother traveled constantly. My father worked non-stop. I was raised by schedules, tutors, and expectations. When other kids were learning how to ride bikes, I was learning how to make formal introductions at events. Mia's heart tightened in her chest. That explained the calm mask he wore so well. So when I look at this, he continued, nodding at the monitor, I feel unprepared. I don't want to be the kind of father who's physically present, but emotionally absent. I don't want this child to grow up the way I did. Mia looked down at her hands, then back up at him. You don't have to repeat anything you came from. You get to choose how you show up. He met her gaze. Vulnerable, sincere, and I want to show up right. You already started, she replied quietly. He blinked. By being here? No, she whispered. By caring enough to question the kind of father you want to be. People who don't care don't ask themselves those questions. His shoulders eased, just a little. And besides, she added, a small smile tugging at her lips, our child isn't going to live in a cold house. They're going to have Durham aunties arguing in the kitchen, cousins popping up uninvited, and a mama who knows how to warm a room just by showing up. Samuel chuckled, a soft, genuine sound. Sounds like a better childhood than mine already. It will be, Mia said gently, if we build it together. For the first time since she got pregnant, the word together didn't scare her. It comforted her. The room felt warmer now, not because of the overhead lights, but because something between Mia and Samuel had shifted. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was gentle, almost reflective, like they both needed a moment to absorb what had just been shared. Mia adjusted her blouse and eased herself upright, one hand supporting her lower back. Samuel instinctively moved forward, offering an arm, not forceful, not assuming, simply available. She hesitated only for a second before resting her hand lightly on his forearm to steady herself. Thanks, she murmured. Anytime, he replied. They stepped out into the hallway, the soft echo of clinic chatter surrounding them. As they walked toward the elevator, Mia felt Samuel glance at her more than once, not staring, but checking, quietly attentive. She wasn't used to someone monitoring her comfort without hovering. When they stepped into the elevator, the doors closed with a soft chime. Inside, the world felt still. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. She looked straight ahead, not yet meeting his eyes. Why are you trying this hard? You could do the bare minimum, and no one would judge you. Your life is already full. No one expects you to show up for a world that's not yours. He turned slightly toward her. Mia, the night we met, I felt free for the first time in a long time. You didn't care about my last name. You didn't care about my family. You didn't want anything from me. You just talked to me, like a person. She swallowed gently. I didn't know it would matter that much, she whispered. It did, he said. And it still does. The elevator hummed quietly between floors. When you told me the truth, he continued, I didn't feel trapped. I felt needed. And I don't mean needed in a burdensome way. I mean needed in a way that gives my life something genuine, something real. Mia finally looked at him. You don't owe me, or this child perfection. I know, he answered. I only owe both of you honesty. That landed heavier than she expected. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was simple and true. The elevator doors opened, but they didn't step out immediately. Mia let out a breath she'd been holding for months. I want partnership, she said softly. Not just parenting side by side. I want someone who grows with me, supports me, challenges me, and understands me. Samuel nodded. Steady, calm, sure. I want that too. And I'm willing to learn how. For the first time, Mia believed it wasn't just words. It was intention. Clear, grounded, real. And that made the future feel less heavy and more possible. The weeks that followed felt slower, softer. The kind of days that didn't rush or demand, but unfolded gently, giving both Mia and Samuel the space to grow into this unexpected bond. Their worlds blended in small, meaningful ways. Texts checking in on appointments, quiet evening phone calls. Samuel stopping by with groceries or offering rides when her back pain flared. But today felt different. It was her last checkup before her due date. The sun outside the clinic was warm, the air calm, and Mia stood beside Samuel as they waited for her name to be called. She shifted her weight, rubbing a small circle against her belly. the movement automatic and tender. "You tired?" Samuel asked. "Always," she said with a dry smile. "This child is running a whole business inside me." He chuckled softly. "Takes after us, then." She gave him a look, half playful, half emotional. The nurse called her name, and Samuel rose with her immediately. Once inside the room, Mia eased onto the exam table while Samuel sat beside her, his hands clasped together in quiet anticipation. The doctor entered with a warm smile. "Well, Mia, we're getting close. Baby looks good. Strong heartbeat, steady position. You're almost there." Mia's breath trembled. Excitement mixed with fear. Joy mixed with the weight of what was coming. Samuel leaned slightly closer. "You're doing incredible." After the exam, the doctor stepped out, leaving them alone in the soft-lit room. Mia adjusted her dress and sat at the edge of the table while Samuel watched her. Not in awe, not in worry, but with something deeper, something grounded. "Mia," he began, "we're close to meeting our child. And before that happens, there's something I want to say." Her heart thudded once, hard, as he reached into his jacket pocket. Not for a ring, not for something extravagant. Instead, he pulled out a small folded card, edges slightly worn like he'd been carrying it for weeks. "This isn't a proposal," he said gently. "Not the kind people expect, anyway." Mia swallowed, anticipation rising. "But it is a promise," he continued, his voice steady and sincere. "A promise made out of choice, not obligation." He offered the card to her with both hands. "This is my commitment to the life we're building together." Mia stared at the card, breath caught in her chest. The moment wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was intimate. The kind of moment that changes everything quietly. And this was their full circle beginning to turn. Mia held the small card carefully, the edges soft from being carried around. She didn't open it yet. She looked at Samuel first, really looked. And what she saw in his face nearly undid her. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't performing. He wasn't hiding behind the polished confidence of a hotel magnate. He looked honest, steady, present. "Open it," he encouraged softly. Her fingers trembled just a little as she unfolded the card. Inside, the handwriting surprised her. Neat, simple, a little uneven in places, like he'd rewritten it more than once before finally settling on these words. "I choose this life with you, not because I'm expected to, but because I want to." Underneath, he'd written, "Partnership, patience, growth, family." At the bottom, "This is the promise I can make today, and the one I will keep tomorrow." Mia's breath caught. Not the shaky kind of fear, but the full kind that comes when emotions swell too quickly to contain. A tear slipped down before she could stop it, and she brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. Samuel leaned forward, his voice a quiet anchor. "You don't have to say anything yet," he said. "I just wanted you to know that I'm choosing this. Choosing us, without pressure or expectations." She pressed the card against her chest for a moment, letting the words settle in her heart. "Samuel," she whispered, her tone fragile but warm, "I wasn't expecting this." "I know," he replied. "That's why I wrote it, instead of trying to make a speech. I wanted you to have something you could read whenever doubts hit." She laughed softly. "You've been paying attention." "I've been trying," he corrected gently. Mia inhaled a deep breath, the weight of months lifting with each second. "You know," she murmured, "when all this started, I kept telling myself you weren't part of my world, that you lived too far above the noise I grew up in, that you'd never understand the life I come from." "And now?" he asked. She looked at him with damp eyes and a slow smile. "Now I see a man who walked straight into the noise, just to meet me where I stand." Emotion flickered through him. Gratitude, relief, something even deeper. Before either of them could speak, Mia felt a sudden tightening across her stomach. She grabbed the edge of the table, eyes widening. "Wait." Samuel jumped to his feet. "Mia? What's wrong?" She let out a slow, shaky breath. "I think." Another tightening, stronger. "Samuel, I think it's time." His world stopped and began again in the same breath. Mia gripped the table a little tighter as the second wave rolled through her. Not sharp, just firm, deep. and unmistakable. She drew a breath, trying to steady herself. Samuel was already beside her, one hand hovering at her back, the other reaching for her bag as if he somehow knew she wouldn't want to bend. "Mia, are you sure?" he asked, voice low but urgent. Another breath, a nod. "I'm sure." It started. Everything in Samuel's face shifted. Not fear, not panic, but a full awareness that life had just stepped into the room and demanded attention. "Okay," he said calmly. "We're leaving now." He didn't rush her, didn't start pacing, didn't bark orders. He simply offered his arm, steady and warm, and Mia leaned into him as they walked out of the quiet room. The ride to the hospital was a mix of silence, focused breathing, and Samuel whispering encouragement whenever she tightened her grip. His free hand stayed open, palm up, waiting, never grabbing, letting her choose when she needed him. Inside the maternity wing, the nurses moved with practiced rhythm, guiding Mia through check-in. Samuel stayed close but respectful, stepping aside only when the nurses needed space, returning the moment they finished. When Mia lay back, adjusting to the room's lighting, Samuel finally exhaled, a long, quiet release that carried months of tension. "You okay?" she asked, watching him through a contraction-free moment. He laughed, under his breath. "I should be asking you that." "You can ask both of us," she teased, hand resting on her belly. Hours passed slowly, but not painfully. Samuel never sat fully relaxed. He stayed at the edge of the chair, leaning forward each time Mia breathed through another wave. At one point she whispered, "You don't have to stay right there," and he answered simply, "I want to." When the nurses announced it was time, Samuel swallowed hard, squeezing Mia's hand as if anchoring both of them. Her focus sharpened, his eyes softened, and in a room filled with measured instructions and steady breaths, a single cry broke through the air. Mia covered her mouth with her hands. Samuel froze, tears gathering before he could stop them. Their baby, tiny, warm, perfect, was placed on Mia's chest. Samuel leaned closer, voice cracking as he whispered, "Welcome, little one." Mia touched the baby's cheek, then looked at Samuel, really looked, and said softly, "We built this together." And Samuel, eyes full, nodded. No lies, no pressure, just choice. The room felt still for a moment, not silent, just full, and Mia whispered the truth she'd been holding. "This is our full circle. A beat, a breath, a future beginning." Would you have forgiven Samuel? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories filled with powerful life lessons.